In Minecraft Live 2020, Mojang announced the bundle, which would fix one of three problems regarding the inventory issue. However, it's been almost 4 years since then, during which we got only blocks, items and mobs, including a literal demon. And we still don't have the bundle. Or rather, do we? This is the Experience tab, which includes one of many optional features that you can enable when creating a new world, and can fix one of the most major problems with the game right now, controversy. And nobody's talking about it. Speaking of controversy, 1.9 or the combat update is still considered the most controversial update in the game, and it doesn't make any sense because of the sheer amount of content that it added to the game, including but not limited to mending and elytra, without which many players can't even play the game properly, and yet these were the main reason behind the update's controversy. So let's look at the addition one by one to understand why they are so controversial, in spite of being useful to almost every player, and how this seemingly insignificant tab could have fixed almost all the controversy. First is Elytra, which is a late game item that enables you to fly through any biome, dimension and even caves. But it wasn't always like that, because prior to being overpowered, Elytra was the worst item ever to be added to the game. When it was first released in update 1.9, it was only used for gliding down hills. To fly with it back then, you had to intentionally pierce your own skull with a punch to bow, which was both inefficient and painful at the same time. It was only after the 1.11.1 update that you could finally use a Farrak rocket to boost yourself mid-air. And this small change made it arguably the best traveling method in the entire game. Well, maybe one of the best, because it works on any and every condition, provided that you have the Farrak rocket to use one. And that brings me on to the Elytra's only two downsides, that you need a lot of Farrak rockets and that you can't wear a chestplate and an Elytra at the same time. However, these two flaws can almost be ignored, because paper and gunpowder, the two ingredients needed for the Farrak rocket, have some of the easiest farms in the entire game. And after the 1.19.4 update, you can switch between the Elytra and the chestplate almost instantly, meaning you can transition between flying and performing mass murder rather quickly. But Elytra wasn't even the most controversial addition in the update. Rather, it was combat, which was the main theme of the update. However, it was actually reworked to make it more skill based, and this was done through additions like attack cooldown, meaning now you have to time a shot to have the maximum DPS. And the cooldown duration for each weapon was well thought out, whereas sword has a short cooldown and good damage, and axe on the other hand, pun intended, has long cooldown yet great damage. And paired with the newly added shield and features like dual wielding, it's difficult to state why these changes were so controversial. But if you look closer, we can see the new combat is much more slower and boring in a sense, whereas now with nethered gear, a PvP duel can last for hours or few seconds, depending on the type of PvP. Now the controversies behind Elytra and combat changes kinda make sense, because they change some major aspects of the game, namely combat and exploration, which are very hard to get right for a massive game that is Minecraft. But what doesn't make any sense is the controversy behind mending and enchantment. It's quite an important one, but still, it's one of nearly 40 in the game. And this one in particular always managed to get the community talking about it. Well, first we have to understand what it does. With mending on an item, it will gain durability as a player who is holding or wearing that item gains XP. Which may seem like a great thing to have, but the problems become apparent when you don't have the mending. Because the alternative is to manually repair your armor over and over again with their respective mineral. And this can quickly become expensive for something like diamond gear, or even annoying for something like Elytra, because farming phantom membrane is not really my definition of fun. But even after that, you may get this too expensive tag, making that item straight up useless. And we can understand the controversy behind mending is quite different, because it's about mending being a necessity rather than overpowered. But even though mending's controversy was the most different, controversy surrounding the combat changes were by far the most influential, because it divided the whole community of the game into halves, with one side of the player base playing a version of the game that was released a decade ago, but it could have been almost entirely avoided. And to understand that, we first have to know how to reduce any type of controversy, because it's unavoidable on this scale. We mainly have two options. Either to increase the number of players who will actually provide feedback, which includes technical and non-casual players, or to reduce the number of players who won't, including most casual players, because they mainly rely on their first impression and opinion, both of which are flawed. And I wasn't the first one to realize this, because in 2019, the main designer of the game, or Jeb, single-handedly released one of following 12 combat snapshots on Reddit. These snapshots or experiments tried to fix the combat in the game. Again, let me remind you, these were released by the same person who added polar bears to the game because his wife liked them. However, this time the community mostly reacted in a fairly positive way, because as I mentioned before, these were released on Reddit and not even the official launcher, which led to most casual players not even knowing about this update. updates. This way, Jeb avoided unnecessary controversy or even worse. And with a similar concept, you have to enable the experimental feature when creating a new world. This indicates that these features are under development, leading to players taking these updates less seriously, as they are subject to change. And in the same year we got a great example of this tab in action, because we also got 1.14 or the update Village and Pillage. And as the name suggests, this update completely reworked the villages in the game, and not only introduced an evil twin to the villagers family, but also made the existing ones overpowered. For example, you can get a whole enchanted diamond armor along with tools, curse book that you will never use, and sea pickles, with some villagers involved with the forbidden infinite emerald glitch. And just with the case of combat, villages also got rebalanced, and it was rebalanced as an experimental toggle, which encouraged players to take this addition very lightly. However, we are talking about Minecraft, and controversy is endless. But even when controversy did occur, Mojang fixed it in the next snapshot, because it was rebalanced under experimental toggle instead of a headline feature in a major update, so they could do so. But wait, after all of that, it still doesn't explain why bundle isn't added to the game outside of this tab. Better reason. Yeah, apparently Mojang can't figure out how to implement this feature on a 2-inch mobile screen. Yup, that's the entire reason behind it.